Welcome, everyone. Again, our presentation today will focus on Section 7, promoting family engagement through outreach and consumer education. As a reminder, you can always access all of the links through everything, you can always access all of the resources through the links that are in the chat. As we wait for everyone to join, we invite you to introduce yourselves in the chat box. Please share your name, your title or role, and the tribe or tribal CCDF program that you represent. As you type, we will introduce ourselves. My name is Safia Jamil, and I'm coming to you from Virginia. I am a TCBC Training and Resource Development Specialist, and I'll pass it over to my colleague, Sarah.
Thank you. My name is Sarah English, and I too am with TCBC, and I serve as a Training and Technical Assistance Specialist for Regions 1 and 6. Carrie?
Thank you, Sarah. Hi, everyone. My name is Carrie Stansbury, and I'm a Tribal TA Specialist with TCBC also for Region 9. And I'll pass it back to Safi to get us started.
Thank you. Now, let's see who we have joining us. If you don't mind sharing your name, your tribal lead agency, and if you share your name and the tribal lead agency you represent and your role, that would be great. Throughout the presentation, you will see M and L icons in the top right corner. These icons mean that the information presented applies to tribes with medium and large allocation sizes. Tribes with medium and large allocation sizes are required to support the role of parents as child care consumers who need information to make informed choices regarding the services that best suit their needs. A key purpose of the Child Care Development Block Grant Act is to promote involvement by parents and family members in the development of their children in child care settings. As we go through this section of your plan, please keep in mind that there are specific practices and policies that you will need to have in place in your CCDF program as part of your day-to-day operations. In your plan, think about what your practices are and what your policies say about particular topics. This is how you'll respond to the questions in this section of the plan. Section 7 is broken up into 6 subsections. This includes a new subsection for monitoring and enforcing policies and practices for CCDF providers, which was previously part of 7.2. The subsections are 7.1, parental complaint process, 7.2, consumer education for parents, providers, and the public, 7.3, monitoring and enforcement policies and practices for CCDF providers, 7.4, additional consumer and provider education, 7.5, procedures for providing information on developmental screenings, and 7.6, consumer statement for parents receiving CCDF funds. Tribal lead agencies can decide how information will be provided. They are not required to maintain a consumer education website, but they do have the option to do so. Consumer education is the process of making information available to parents, providers, and the general public to build awareness of childcare options, high-quality care, and child learning and development. This information helps parents make informed decisions as consumers of childcare. In this section, we will discuss how tribal lead agencies provide information to high-quality care and other resources are made available to families. When sharing information and materials on consumer education, it's important to remember the required target audiences, their needs, and their goals. Each group has specific goals in mind too. Parents receiving CCDF assistance need to have access to your program's consumer education information in order to decide which childcare provider to choose for their child. The general public needs to know your CCDF program's purpose and services for the tribal community so they can provide input and feedback on your plan. Additionally, supporting family self-sufficiency and fostering healthy child development are CCDF goals. Your program's consumer education information can raise awareness in your tribal community about the importance of quality childcare and how your program supports child development. Childcare providers need to know your expectations. They need to see what information is communicated with families and your monitoring process. They also need to know how your CCDF program can support providers in implementing health and safety standards and any established quality initiatives. Also, childcare providers can be a part of outreach. It is important for childcare providers to understand your program's available services so they can answer parent questions, make effective referrals, and know how to prevent suspension and expulsion of children in their childcare setting. One resource that might be helpful as you develop Section 7 of your fiscal year 2023 to 2025 Tribal CCDF Plan is the Consumer Education for Child Care and Development Fund Programs Brief. We'll put the link in the chat box for your review. Tribal lead agencies with medium and large allocation sizes have flexibility regarding how the parental complaint process will be designed and what it can look like. Remember, you'll need to ensure you have specific policies and practices regarding parental complaints in your CCDF program. Then you'll describe what you do in these questions in your plan. So in the parental complaint process, tribal lead agencies must provide a detailed description of the reporting process for parents to submit complaints about child care providers, including the process for substantiating complaints, the manner in which the tribal lead agency maintains a record of substantiated parental complaints, ways the tribal lead agency makes information on such parental complaints available to the public on request. And it's important to note that if you have a tribally operated center, it's recommended that you reach out to your human resources department to determine what information can be shared on employee complaints with the public prior to developing your policies and procedures. A tribal lead agency must describe the reporting process through which parents can submit complaints about child care providers, including a link if the process is web-based. If applicable, this can include a tribally operated center. Tribal lead agencies have flexibility when creating this reporting process for parents. Examples include, but are not limited to, an operated phone line, a voicemail box, a web-based form, or an email address. The tribal lead agency must read the complaint they receive and decide if it is a substantiated complaint. The tribe would need to define the indicators of a substantiated complaint. For example, if a grandmother saw a teacher at a center grab a child by the arm, how would the tribal lead agency substantiate that complaint? The tribal lead agency would also need to have a policy and procedure on how to respond to the complaint. This could be a closed door complaint where people do not have the right to know what type of follow-up happened. Or on the other hand, the policy could require that follow-up information is distributed to partners, such as your state licensing agency, if the provider is state licensed. The tribe has the flexibility to develop this process. A tribe may already have a complaint procedure in place for other programs that can be adapted to the CCDF program. When looking at this, here are some questions to consider. What type of complaint triggers a monitoring visit or follow-up visit to the provider? And are there any differences in processes for providers monitored by the tribal lead agency, by a state licensed agency, or by another entity or agency? Here's another way at looking at the complaint process. Again, the three parts are screening, substantiating, and responding. Screening includes receiving the complaint, determining whether to investigate, and determining if referrals to child welfare or law enforcement are needed. Substantiating includes investigating the complaint, collecting information during the investigation, and reaching a conclusion about the complaint. And responding includes documenting the complaint and findings, notifying the provider about the complaint and findings, and taking steps if the investigation concludes that the provider has committed a violation. Tribal lead agencies have flexibility in developing this process of maintaining substantiated parental complaints. For example, one tribe may use an Excel file to keep track of complaints, and another tribe might keep a binder in a locked cabinet. Check with tribal leadership for their recommendation as you develop your own process. Tribal lead agencies should highlight any differences in processes for CCDF and non-CCDF providers and tribally regulated, licensed, and license-exempt providers. Additionally, they should explain how they coordinate with a state licensing agency or another entity or agency to ensure that a substantiated complaint has been addressed and recorded. A process for sharing information regarding substantiated complaints with the public must be described in subsection 7.1.4.1. All substantiated complaints must be made available to the public upon request. Tribal CCDF grantees have flexibility in how they provide this information. One example of a process is requiring the inquiries be in the form of a written request within a response available from the tribal lead agency within a certain time frame. How does your tribal lead agency maintain records of substantiated complaints? Think about what you would do when a complaint comes in. You might get a complaint about a family home provider, a center-based provider, or an employee from your tribally operated center. When a complaint comes in, consider the following questions. Where and to whom does the information go to? What is the time frame for reviewing the complaint? Who is responsible? How is the complaint assessed and investigated? How and within what time frame is the response issued? Is there a log for tracking complaints and responses? And how is the information prepared for public disclosure? Now, let's practice using a complaint policy to screen, substantiate, and respond to parent complaints. In a moment, everyone will be moved into breakout rooms for 10 minutes to complete an activity that has 2 steps. In the first step, you'll review sample parent complaint procedures. These are real procedures from other tribal CCDF agencies that they use to substantiate, to screen, substantiate, and respond to complaints. In the second step, you'll apply one of these samples to a complaint scenario. Here's the link to where you can see these samples. I just dropped it in the chat. This Padlet states the steps again and provides the samples and scenarios. Please work as a group to discuss the samples and apply one of the samples to a scenario. So to show you what this looks like, I'm going to open it up. All right, and so when you look at this screen, there are 2 steps, and I'm going to actually zoom in. Step 1 is over here. You can either do this as a group.
We still see the PowerPoint.
Yeah,
Oh,
I'll stop and you can pick it up.
gotcha. Thank you. Okay, can
Now
you
we're
all see it
good.
now?
Yes.
Great. All right, so you can see 2 steps right here. I'm going to focus on step 1 for a moment. In step 1, you see 3 real complaint procedures from 3 different tribal lead agencies. And if you click on one, you'll be able to scroll through and look at how the tribal lead agency responds to this and how they process it. You can also zoom in and out up here. And you can look at each sample that way. Then in step 2, over here, you're going to pick one of these scenarios, whichever one you feel comfortable responding to, and you're going to use one of the sample complaint procedures to go through that. So at this point, we're going to move into breakout rooms where we're going to do this as a group. Hello, everyone, and welcome back. All right, so let's just take a moment to debrief. Speaking for my group, okay, good. So we looked at all 3 scenarios, and then when we looked at the complaint, we responded with the sample complaint procedure number 1. And then also I wanted to point out how one of the people in our group pointed out that the sample complaint procedure is very similar to her tribal CCDF agency and also used a lot of the same language as the state, which is a great point because you want to make sure that if you are, when obviously most tribal lead agencies have multiple partnerships, if you're partnering with anyone, you want to make sure that the language is consistent so that something as sensitive as this has a very measured response. We also discussed the response to scenario number 3, where there was an allergic reaction. And so we talked about, okay, who do we want to contact first? It's important to meet with the complaintee, to call the parents, that we don't want information to be shared through the grapevine, that we want to respond in a very professional manner, and that we wanted to make sure that we stick to the timeline. If there's anyone that would from our group that would like to share more, anything that I left out, feel free to unmute and do that, or feel free to share in the chat. But that was our experience in room 2. Would another presenter like to describe what happened in their room?
I can share, Safi. So our room was really quiet. We went over the procedures really quickly, and then the scenarios, and then also I just mentioned that in other trainings that like different types of scenarios when you're creating your response time, like say if you had a home provider and children were outside unattended and somebody drove by and said, hey, there's children outside, they're unattended, versus, I didn't like the way the provider's tone was with me this morning. Like, are you going to have your response time vary from those two scenarios where I respond immediately and drive to that provider? And if it's, if I see them outside alone, or if I'm going to, respond to this, I didn't like the way the provider spoke to me, maybe within 2 days. So those things can vary. And I think that was about it. So we just went over those things. And then again, I just mentioned if they have any questions after and they think of anything, to just reach out. So that was our room.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing, Carrie. Would another presenter like to go?
I'm happy to share. So in our group, we looked at form 3 and we looked at complaint 2. And so some of the comments that we had was also, as we're going through the process of the form, is making sure that everyone is aware and trained about what that might look like. So do parents know how to fill out a form? Is our form friendly in that aspect? Do they have access to it? What does all of those things look like? And are the staff trained on how to access the forms, where to get them, how to walk a parent through that process if they have any concerns? And then we looked at, since our complaint was about developmentally and culturally appropriate toys and things in the environment, we talked about how in this scenario, we may also have to gather more information about the family's background, what they view as not appropriate in the classroom, and going in and visiting and spending some time with that classroom and that teacher to figure out some of the nuances that might have happened, so that we can figure out how to best support that family and be able to identify their specific needs.
Thank you for sharing. And the final group?
Yeah, our group was kind of quiet, but even so, we went through the parental complaint procedure forms and kind of noticed the differentiations of forms that were created by each of these tribal lead agencies, and kind of grabbed the scenarios and thought, okay, so which one would need more immediate attention? And with NASBA's help, I think complaint procedures 1 and the scenarios were really helpful to see as an example, to let our participants know in that there's an immediate attention that is these particular scenarios. So I think it was great to kind of go through it and just walk through it and give them an idea of what a complaint and procedure form looks like, as well as just kind of letting them know that this is part of the tribal plan preprint, and if they need help in responding and needing support around complaint procedures and samples, that they're more than welcome to let us know and the program specialists know. So I think it was a really great scenario.
Thank you so much for sharing. And there were so many different points within that. And then also just the fact that, with a topic like this and the amount of flexibility we have, we definitely encourage, reach out to other tribal CCDF programs, reach out to TCBC, reach out to your regional program specialist. We want to help develop these things as well. And then if you want to go back and look at those sample parent complaint procedures, that link will be live well beyond this presentation. You can always use those samples as well. Thank you very much. All right, so now we are going to cover section 7.2. If you would like to follow along, please turn to 7.2 in your plan or move there within CARS. Tribal lead agencies have flexibility in the ways they develop and deliver consumer education for parents, providers, and the public. Here, you'll need to ensure you have specific policies and practices regarding how you provide your consumer education to parents, providers, and the public through your CCDF program. Then you'll describe what you do in these questions in your plan. Tribal lead agencies are required to provide information to families, the general public, and when applicable, childcare providers through a method of their choice. The information must be consumer-friendly and easily accessible. The available information must include provider-specific information, monitoring and inspection reports about the provider, and the quality of each provider, if such information is available about the provider. The information should also provide access to an annual service area report on child deaths, serious injuries, and the number of substantiated cases of child abuse that have occurred in childcare settings. To assist families with any additional questions, the information should provide contact information to local child care and resource and referral organizations and any other agencies that can assist families in better understanding the information. And although there is no federal CCDF definition for easily accessible, tribal lead agencies may consider easily accessible information to be simple to obtain, to be written in plain language, and to be easy to understand. The tribal lead agency must describe how they inform parents, families, providers, and the public on how the tribal lead agency and/or other entities or agencies conduct monitoring and inspections of childcare providers, including tribally operated centers, if applicable. The next subsection details monitoring and enforcement policies and procedures for CCDF providers. Before we get into that section, we wanted to pause here and see if you have any questions or thoughts about the content that we've gone through so far. Does anyone have any questions? Okay, and if you do have any questions that come up, feel free at any point to unmute and ask, or to drop those questions in the chat, and I'm happy to respond. All right, so now I'll pass it to Sarah to discuss the next session.
Thank you, Safi. The next section, 7.3, focuses on monitoring and enforcement policies and practices for CCDF providers. In this section, you'll need to ensure you have specific policies and practices that you follow regarding monitoring and enforcement policies. Then you'll describe what you do in these questions in your plan. Tribal lead agencies are required to collect and share information about child care services to promote parental choice to parents of eligible children, the general public, and where applicable, child care providers. Examples of such information are as follows: child care resource and referral organizations through the state or through the tribe, direct conversations with eligible caseworkers and child care providers, information sessions, or an intake process with families. 7.3.1.1 refers to how you conduct comprehensive background checks for providers and offenses that may prevent individuals from being employed in the childcare field. Keep in mind that tribal lead agencies have the flexibility to waive comprehensive background checks for relative providers. However, the tribal lead agency must ensure they are meeting the minimum health and safety requirements to ensure the well-being of the children and that they are caring for relative children only. Information about the availability of child care services through CCDF, other child care programs, and financial assistance must be shared. There is flexibility in how this will look, but in subsection 7.3.1.2, the tribal lead agency must describe how the tribal lead agency lists all providers who are eligible to deliver CCDF services. Information is tailored for eligible parents, the public, and child care providers where applicable, and partnerships that are formed to make this information available to families. Partnerships form a strong foundation for informing families about services available. Having this information easily available saves valuable time for families when in need. CCDF programs can support families in accessing services by making information readily available. For example, as a former CCDF administrator, I was able to partner with the tribal health department who worked with child care providers when emergency placement was needed. Together, we helped inform families of the availability of services. This is how a partnership could look. Subsection 7.3.2, tribal lead agencies are required to make monitoring and inspection reports available about each licensed provider and non-relative providers to provide CCDF services in plain language. Quality Rating and Improvement Systems, QRIS, managed by the Tribal Lead Agency, QRIS managed by the state, National Accreditation, Enhanced Licensing Systems, Head Start, Early Head Start Performance Standards, meeting pre-K requirements. These reports must include results of required annual monitoring visits and visits due to major substantiated complaints about a provider's failure to comply with health and safety requirements and childcare policies. The reports must be in plain language, that is, communicating the audience can understand, and the first time they read it. As defined by the Tribal Lead Agency, the reports must also be timely to ensure the results of the reports are available and easily understood by parents and families when they are deciding on a childcare provider. Tribal Lead Agencies must provide at least 3 years of records when available, beginning October 1st of 2019 and going forward. Please note that if states issue monitoring and inspection reports, indicate by stating not applicable. State issues monitoring and inspection reports. You must describe how these reports are made to the public. They can they can choose how they share this information. For example, it could be shared online or as a hard copy. The Tribal Lead Agency can require childcare providers to post this information or offer it on request to the family. Many times, we have seen this information offered during the intake process to the family. 7.3.2.2 discusses plain language. When you are developing and disseminating consumer education resources, ensure your families are able to easily understand the information. The information must be consumer-friendly and easily accessible. Please note that Tribal Lead Agencies that rely on state monitoring and inspection reports do not have to report them in the plan. This section would be automatically skipped within CARS. In this section, you will check the box that relates to how the program certifies the monitoring and inspection reports and plain language summary. Additionally, there are some boxes that will need additional information describing these processes. This process helps the family identify findings and compliances to support the quality of childcare environment. Please note that Tribal Lead Agencies that rely on state monitoring and inspection reports, do not have to report them in the plan. Again, this will automatically be skipped in the CARS system. 7.3.2.4, maintaining monitoring reports. In this section, you will describe the process for maintaining monitoring reports. Specifically, Tribal Lead Agencies must provide the minimum number of years reports are made available to the public for record keeping. Just as a reminder, the minimum number of years of reports to be made available is 3 years. You can choose to extend that. If state issues the monitoring reports, please indicate by stating not applicable, state issues monitoring and inspection reports. In 7.3.3, you will certify by describing all aggregated data on serious injury, child death, and substantiated cases of child abuse that have occurred in the child care setting each year. The data must be made available and must be organized by category of care. For example, center-based child care, family child care, and in-home child care for all eligible CCDF provider categories in the Tribal Lead Agency service area. The reports should not list individual provider-specific information or personal identifying information, also known as PII. We're going to pause for a moment and see if we can get the slides back on. This is the lovely joy of virtual sessions, is that we do get to experience some technical challenges on occasion. Okay, we're back. And we're going to bump to the next slide, Teresa. Thank you. 7.3.3.1, in this section, a description of how childcare providers must submit reports of any serious injuries or death of children occurring in the childcare to be designated entities is required. The tribal lead agency must also obtain aggregated data from the monitoring agency or entity. The tribal lead agency will need to provide the definitions of substantiated child abuse and serious injury in these sections. This information will need to be reported to the designated entity. Tribal lead agencies also need to respond to how they are collecting, storing, and sharing this information to the general public. Additionally, the definition of substantiated child abuse and serious injury will need to be described in the plan. The tribal lead agency shall also describe how they provide referrals to CCR&R agencies through their consumer education information. Tips on how the tribal lead agency may provide these referrals to parents and families are direct conversations, posting the information to tribal websites, social media. Should they have a website available? Hard copies in a parent handbook, annual updates to childcare flyers, during information sessions, during intake processes with families. This is a great time to get to know the families you are serving and offer what support that they may need. Tribal lead agencies need to ensure they have the contact information and referrals to their local CCR&R agencies. The consumer education information should include how families can contact the tribal lead agency, its designee, or other programs that can help the parent understand the information included. The tribal lead agency must describe the following: what is provided, such as written materials and information through direct communication, how information is tailored for eligible parents, the public, and childcare providers. Partnerships formed to make this information available to the families. Okay, we're going to pause here for a moment and see if you have any questions before we move on to section 7.4. Okay, so we're going to move on to section 7.4. Remember, you can always drop your questions in the chat if they come up. The next section, 7.4, focuses on providing additional consumer and provider education information that will help parents make informed consumer choices regarding childcare. In this section, you'll need to ensure you have specific policies and practices that you follow regarding how providing additional consumer and provider education in your CCDF program. Then you'll describe what you do in these questions in your plan. Parental choice is important to families for understanding the quality a childcare program offers. This requirement will provide families the opportunity to make informed choices. This supports family needs and preferences for their children. Programs must ensure that parents have the opportunity to choose from the full range of eligible childcare settings, which include center-based, in-home childcare, and family childcare. 7.4.1, you must describe the ways in which you share information about the availability of childcare services and financial assistance. Tribal lead agencies share information about the availability of childcare services through the CCDF program, childcare services through other eligible programs, such as Tribal Pre-K, financial assistance to obtain childcare services. Now, let's talk about the dissemination of program information. When providing information about the following applicable programs and benefits, you must include a description of the program and its benefits, what information is provided, how the information is provided, how the information is tailored to a variety of audiences, and any partners who assist in providing the information. 7.4.3, tribal lead agencies should describe how they are providing information to parents about existing resources and services related to physical health and development, healthy eating, and physical activity. Tribal lead agencies can also provide information and referral on developmental screenings, such as early and periodic screenings, diagnoses, and treatment systems, also known as EPSDT services. Tribal lead agencies can also share information about parenting or family engagement programs. Information about best practices can be disseminated in many ways, including verbally, a newsletter, via a website or classes, training and brochures, or other options. When tailoring information to a variety of audiences, be sure to include parents, families, providers, and the general public. Tribal lead agencies should also identify any applicable partners, such as other tribal departments, Indian Health Services, the state, Head Start Early Head Start programs, SNAP, WIC, or the CACFP program, or any other tribal partners that there might be in your community. The tribal lead agency must share information on positive behavioral interventions and support models based on research and best practices for those from birth to school age. At a minimum, include how and what information is provided and tailored to a variety of audiences, and include any partners in providing this information. Possible partners might include your local tribal or Indian Health Services behavioral health clinic, local mental health agencies, or partners in the community. Local or tribal child care resource and referral agencies may also be a good source of information on early childhood models of positive behavior intervention and ways to support children's mental health and development across the various stages of childhood, from birth to school-age children. Tribal lead agencies must describe what policies they have in place to prevent the suspension and expulsion of children from birth to age 5. They will also describe with how policies are shared with families, providers, and the public. For example, a tribal lead agency may have a policy that if there is a child with a social and emotional issue that harms other children, they will direct the parent or guardian towards services to assist the child. Policies can also be put in place for prevention. For example, if a child is hurting another child, a tribal lead agency may create a policy that requires adequate intervention staffing, allowing for one staff member per child to effectively address the situation. Another example might be the program-wide implementation of evidence-based behavior support programs, such as the tiered pyramid model for positive behavior support in early childhood. Information about the use of the pyramid model and what it means for children and families might be given to the families when they select a provider. These policies can be shared in the child care application, the parent handbook, or through other methods. By having the information readily available, parents can have confidence in their facilities. I'm going to pass it to Carrie to discuss our next section.
Thank you, Sarah. So for this next section, 7.5, it focuses on procedures for providing information on developmental screenings. Here, you'll need to ensure you have specific policies and practices regarding how you provide information on developmental screenings in your CCDF program, and then you'll describe what you do in your plan. So the idea behind the tribal lead agency providing referrals about developmental screenings is to be able to know where to send families for these services. It's more than simply providing a list of websites, and it's important to explain how developmental screenings are important. Young children between the ages of birth through 5 years go through stages of development at a rapid pace. Development varies not only from one child to another, but also across social, emotional, physical, cognitive, and linguistic domains. Early and periodic screening ensures children's healthy growth, making sure they are meeting all critical developmental milestones in the early years. Tribal lead agencies will need to include how they will make this information available to families. Information should include appropriate websites, existing resources, and a preparedness to answer questions about the use of developmental screenings and services. To obtain those screenings for children who receive subsidies and who might be at risk of cognitive or other developmental delays, You are required to provide this information to eligible families during CCDF intake and to child care providers through training and education. The tribal lead agency needs to have a plan that is current and acceptable for its community on collecting and sharing information on available resources and services to CCDF parents, the general public, and child care providers. It would also need to have a procedure for sharing this information. Information should include EP, SDT services under Medicaid and carried out under Title 19 of the Social Security Act, and developmental screening services available through the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, idea of Part B, Section 619 and Part C. For more information, you can explore developmental screening resources from the CDC website, and we've dropped that link for you in the chat, or we're going to drop it in there. Okay, additional information that needs to be shared includes describing the following: how the tribal lead agency shares information with families during the intake process, such as verbally during your intake process, through a brochure or other written information during your intake process, or other ways to share your information as described in the other portion in the plan preprint. Also, how CCDF families or child care providers receiving CCDF can obtain screenings for CCDF children at risk for cognitive or other developmental delays, and how child care providers get this information through training and professional development. So let's take a moment to share your processes for communicating information on developmental screenings. You can respond in the chat box, or you can take yourself off mute. So in your program, like how do you share this information? I know one tribe shared that they give out a packet of resources and like how to find who does screenings, and they mentioned like Child Find, and those kinds of things. So if anybody wants to share how you do that, you can take yourself on mute or put it in the chat.
Hi, everybody. This is Luann. Here at Acoma, the teachers, parents are informed through their handbook regarding developmental screenings, and then teachers do complete ASQ screenings. And then once the screenings are done, based on ratings, if there's that need, parents will be informed, and then a meeting will take place with parent if there's need for a referral. And then we work with the local early intervention programs to then set up meetings with parents, and if services are needed, then those will be provided.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing, Luann. Anybody else like to share? Okay, Sarah put in the chat, as a parent, the teachers meet with us quarterly. Oh, she just read what Luann said. So, and as a reminder, you can download the chat by clicking on the 3 on the bottom right, and you can save that. Okay, we can move to the next slide. Okay, so we're gonna pause here really quickly to see if you have any questions or any thoughts on the content that we just presented. Okay, so as usual, if you think of anything, then you can put it in the chat or feel free to stop us. Okay, so moving on, tribal lead agencies are required to provide information to parents, the general public, and when applicable, child care providers through a method of their choice. Information must be consumer friendly and easily accessible. Tribal lead agencies must provide CCDF parents with a consumer statement that contains information that will help them make informed choices in childcare. Tribal lead agencies have flexibility in developing what this looks like. It can be a hard copy version, electronic, it can be a brochure on your website if you have one, an email, or another method. Tribal lead agencies must choose the method that is appropriate for their community and families served. If the consumer statement is provided electronically, tribal lead agencies should ensure that the statement is accessible to parents and that parents have a way to contact someone to address any questions they may have. All consumer statements should be written in language that is easy for parents to understand. Okay, so what are the components of a consumer education statement? The provider-specific consumer statement includes very specific information about the child care provider selected by the parent, including health and safety requirements met by the provider, any licensing or regulatory requirements met by the provider, the date the provider was last inspected, and any violations of these requirements, and any voluntary quality standards met by the provider. It should also include general information about how subsidies are designed to promote equal access, how to submit a complaint, and that was kind of discussed in one of the breakout rooms when Sarah shared, and how to contact local resource and referral or other community-based supports. So we're going to stop right here and share and Safi's going to share this resource with you that might be helpful to you as you develop section 7.6 of your plan, and it's the how to develop a consumer statement, tips and considerations. So I'll pass it to Safi so she can go over this.
Thank you, Gary. So I just dropped the link in the chat, and I'm going to show you guys this tips and considerations for a consumer statement. And I just wanted to point out again that the whole point of the consumer statement is to inform parents, providers, and the general public about what your program offers, and that there is a lot of flexibility within that. So within the consumer statement, there is some background information, but they want to recognize that ultimately there is a lot of flexibility within your consumer statement and how you're going to share that with your community. But you do want to have specific components within it. So it gives tips and considerations on the different components of provider information. For example, developing a template for your consumer statement that includes the provider's name, address, contact information, and license number if applicable. That way the information is consistent across all of your providers. It also includes perhaps including section headers to address specific parts. And then if you continue on.
Safi, do I need to stop sharing? Do you have?
Oh,
that?
yes, I'm sharing the tips and considerations.
There we go.
Okay, can everyone see it now?
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry for that. So I was just highlighting the consumer statement components and went over provider information. And if you look on the second page of the tips and considerations, it continues on with Tribal CCDF program information. Again, this could be in a brochure or it could be on a website. It could be shared in different ways. But it also includes, how subsidies are designed to promote equal access, how you can submit a complaint, and contact information for local resource and referral agencies. Here, I'm going to zoom in a little bit and go over again how really you have that flexibility to decide how you're going to disseminate your consumer statement. Here are some samples. You can share it electronically through a website, an email, or another electronic method. You could share it as a hard copy, as a handout, a brochure or binder, or another way. And it really is just what best serves your community. You have that flexibility. And then on the final page, we wanted to recognize that you have some resources here, the consumer education for Tribal CCDF programs brief, and then the policies and procedures checklist and the specific sections within that checklist that pertain to the consumer statement. And so in the tips and considerations, we hope that this helps you as you build your consumer statement to make sure that all the components are met. And I'll pass it back to Carrie.
Thank you, Sophie. So there's also another resource we wanted to share, and this is the resource directory for Section 7. And this directory has links to references, resources, and policy guidance for each component within Section 7. And we're going to drop that link for you so you can access the resource directory. Okay, we're going to pause again here to see if you have any questions or any thoughts. Okay, questions, we can move to the next slide. Okay, so in coming to the end of our presentation, we just like for you to reflect on Section 7 with the following questions. And again, these questions are at the end of each section presentation. So questions are, what questions do you have for your tribal leadership or planning team? What questions do you still have regarding the CCDF plan section for TA? What strategies would you like to apply in your CCDF program? What are your next steps for completing the CCDF plan section? And what technical assistance might you need to support your next steps? So we just want to thank you for joining us. We would appreciate your feedback on this presentation. And if you could take a quick minute to complete the survey, it'll help us know what we can do to improve and to deliver the information in a way that works for everyone. And we've shared the link for the survey in the chat. And just a reminder that tomorrow we'll be holding a regional meet and greet and writing cafe. And again, we'll drop this registration link in the chat as well. And then another reminder, we have our office hours, and we're going to drop that registration link in the chat as well. And the office hours will be from December 6th to January 24th every week. So we just want to thank you again for joining us today. I know we're done a little early. And just remember that you can request additional technical assistance from our team by reaching out to your regional office.